Okay, I'm up here on the roof, supposedly on my day off, but I was looking out the window and I could see such a nice summer sky right above the very distant cityscape that's visible from where I live. And that's why I'm here, and I just couldn't resist the opportunity to shoot a very refined cityscape image that I've been wanting to do for the past few weeks, and it's only today that the weather made it possible. Today I'm out here, I'm shooting with my A7R III and the 70-200 f4G, right on top of course, the Gitzo Legende. Review is going to be out on f-stoppers in a few days. But yeah, so actually the key thing that I wanted to do is to come up with a very refined cityscape image, and that means being able to do really long exposures of a very fast moving sky. So the goal is to do about 4 or 5 minutes of exposure with, of course, the very nice cityscape in the foreground. So the view here is actually two cities, Quezon City and Pasig City, with Makati City in the background. So it's pretty much, if I'm not mistaken, around 80% of the skyline of Metro Manila. So yeah, just so you know what you're gonna see. But yeah, so today again the goal is to do about 4 or 5 minutes of exposure to have a very smooth scudding of clouds, and I'm gonna do that with the Miops Smart Plus. So the key thing that it will do is, of course, hold my shutter for an entire 5 minutes, and I'm going to be computing also how long the actual exposure is going to be depending on my base exposure. And I'm going to make use of H&Y K-series filters. So right now I have an ND64, a 6-stop ND with a CPL right on the drop-in filter slot right there, and also another 6-stop, so it's a total of 12, plus a 1.2 balancer ND. So this is pretty much just a soft GND with a bit of a different gradation. So I think you can see it right there. So of course these two are going to allow me to do that very long exposure, and this one is of course going to balance out the sky. Also, of course, the CPL. First, let's shoot the base exposure. It's 1/100, f11 and ISO 100. So let me just slide this in and lock my filters. And what I'm gonna do now is go to the Miops mobile app. So we were at 1/100 for the base exposure. When you're calculating the aperture and the ISO, just has to be constant. And now we input how many stops I'm doing. So it's going to be a total of 12 stops. It's ND4096. And it tells me to do just 40 seconds. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a few more stops, which is I'm going to add 3 more stops, virtually as a filter, but it's actually just the aperture. And if I do that, it's going to give me 5 minutes. And this is going to be quite a Hail Mary shot, in the sense that I might be wasting some time if I make a mistake. So there we have 15 stops. starting from a base exposure of 1/100, and it's going to give us 5 minutes and 27 seconds. And we press timed release and it's going to shoot for us. Just make sure that your camera is already on bulb. And here we go. Okay, so editing this is gonna be pretty quick and straightforward. First, what we're gonna do is really enhance the details and bring out and extract out of the raw file the very rich and silky sky that we came up with. After that, of course, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna clean up on the foreground, because I would rather come up with a foreground with mostly the trees and the greens to really complement and isolate the cityscape in the back. So I'm gonna start by a quick crop, and I'm gonna do this 16:9, also because this is of course the thumbnail of this video. And I really want to make use of the rule of thirds doing this, because I want to emphasize how huge the sky is right above. And that's how it's going to be. And let's apply a quick color profile. Adobe Landscape would be perfect. And adjust exposure. So what I'm going to do is I want to first really see what the raw file can give me, and I'll do that by decreasing exposure. And we can see that as we bring down the exposure, there's so much more colors to be brought out, and so I'm going to stick to that. And I'm just going to recover some of the details in the foreground by using a gradient tool. So you don't want to overdo this, because it's going to look unrealistic. I think that's good enough. Let me go back right there and there. So let me just toggle clarity just a tiny bit. Fix the colors real quick. So I want to create a bit more contrast. Of course, this was actually the result already of the CPL, but I want to enhance further the darkening of the blue skies to give it a bit more contrast and really make the clouds pop up. I'll do that by reducing the luminance on the blues. And last I'd like to do is also adjust the hues of the greens and the yellows. And let's give that warmth a bit more pop. And there, so we're ready to open this on Photoshop. There we go. So first I want to do is inspect before we do the final cleanup. But generally I'm very happy with how this turned out. And as you can see, my editing on this one is very straightforward, and it shouldn't be all too complicated. If it weren't for all the clutter in the scene, this would have been more simple, or simpler rather. But yeah, let me just do a quick clean up. I do see a few sensor dust that's very easily fixed with the heal tool, which is going to be our weapon of choice for when we dive into the cityscape. And I really like taking out this protruding construction cranes as much as I can. So the trick here is actually to work with the smallest brush size you can. And you don't really have to take out the entire crane, just maybe the major protruding parts. And always remember to give Photoshop a bit of room to work with when you're removing these things. So the strokes that you make shouldn't be too big. So you can see, as I said, this is a frame that consists of two major cities and another one in the back, which makes up about, I think, 80% of the entire Metro Manila skyline. And given that we're a developing country, supposedly, you can expect that there's a lot of building going on. So if you're from the Philippines, that was Pasig City with Makati in the background. And this right here is the southern end of Quezon City, which is Araneta City or Araneta Center. And yeah, I think that's it. So we've cleaned that up, and now we have to deal with all the houses in the foreground. So I'm gonna rely entirely on the heal tool as well. And because these are trees, then I really wouldn't mind having the random patterns and the overlaps. As long as it doesn't really look like patches of random stuff. But again, do give Photoshop a bit of room to work when you're letting it take over the cleaning up and removal of all the clutter in your frame. So the repetitive strokes should be good enough. Yeah, I mean, there's still a few more tweaks that could be done on this photo, but this is generally the output that I was looking for. Okay, so I came up here with one goal, and that's to shoot the long exposure right behind the cityscape. And this is one of those shoots that everything came in perfectly. So generally I took just 3 different shots plus 2 test shots to get the base exposure, and that's it. So I do hope to be able to do more videos like this, especially when it's safer to go outside and go on location. But I do hope that you got the point of how simple it is to do long exposures like these. Yeah, if you have any questions about the filters, about the process, about the trigger, or anything else that I've mentioned, please do leave a comment down below and I'll get to you. And don't forget to like and subscribe, because that really means a lot to me. So yeah, thank you for watching, guys.